Okay, good morning. Good morning. I am Vanessa Walker. I am a licensed pharmacist and founder of the APhTI Project. Welcome to our first official live Google Hangout. And this is the APhTI Breakfast Club. And what we're going to do for Thursdays in February at 6:30 in the morning, we're going to talk about a certain topic in pharmacy. So I'm glad that you're here. It's busy at my house because my son is up. He's getting ready to go to school. But anyway, we have a presentation to do. If you were able to download the slides, that's wonderful because I did put them out for you over on the Hangouts page. So if you can go there and you can just download the Dropbox file that has the uh, presentation slides for you, that would be great. Okay, so today's topic is the drugs that are used to treat high blood pressure, and this is part one. When I was actually delving into the topic, I realized that I didn't want to have you here all day, and it's only 30 minutes. So I just wanted to give you just an overview. Now, first of all, before we get into the drugs that are used, we have to know what is blood pressure. Okay, so what is blood pressure? When the doctor puts that cuff on your arm and starts pumping that air into that cuff, what exactly is he measuring? Well, it's a measure of arterial pressure. Ideally, its intent is to measure the force of contraction of the heart. And as you know, or as you may know or may not know, the blood pressure is comprised of two numbers. And some people say the top number and the bottom number, but actually the technical terms are systolic and diastolic. So your systolic pressure is that top number. And when you measure the systolic pressure, it is actually a measure of the heart contracting. So it's the force of the heart contracting. When you measure the diastolic pressure, which is the bottom number measures the force of the heart's release. So there's a force of contraction and there's a force of release. The force of contraction is greater than the force of release. That's the way it should be. Okay? Now, when we say systolic and we say diastolic, those words are adjectives. Systolic actually means that the heart is in systole, and that's the contraction. And diastolic means the heart is in diastole, and that is the relaxation of the heart muscle. Okay, so that's an overview of what blood pressure is. Now, when we measure blood pressure, excuse me, when we measure blood pressure, we actually measure it in something called millimeters of mercury. Okay, millimeters of mercury. Whenever you see Hg, capital H, lowercase g, that is the chemical symbol for mercury. And how that came about, because a lot of times nowadays things are digital, but it actually used to be used, mercury used to be used in the apparatus to measure blood pressure. And it would be measured in millimeters. So that's where that came from, millimeters of mercury. What is high blood pressure? Now we're getting really to the meat of the topic. What is high blood pressure? Well, high blood pressure actually has a nickname. It is called the silent killer. It is called the silent killer. And the reason why it's called the silent killer is because it is a disease with no symptoms. Many people that suffer from high blood pressure can have no symptoms. Some people will complain of headache, and a lot of times that happens when the blood pressure shoots up all of a sudden as opposed to rising gradually over time. So it is nicknamed the silent killer, and high blood pressure is one of those diseases that is in epidemic proportions in this country. But high blood pressure is also called hypertension, hypertension. Hypertension is the same as high blood pressure. And when we talk about, my cat is scratching over there. When we talk about the abbreviations for high blood pressure, we have HBP, right? And we also have HTN. You see my son running around in the background. Say hi, Chris. Okay. Hi. All right. So we have HBP and we have HTN. Now, 120/80 is the maximum normal blood pressure for an adult, okay? But it's not until the blood pressure goes up to 140/90 and above that the person is considered to have high blood pressure. So blood pressures that are in between, let's say 121 for the systolic, from 121 to 139, and for the diastolic from 81 to 89. That is called pre-hypertension. And it's not really treated at that point, although it is above the maximum normal pressure. It's not really treated with drugs at that point, but they do lifestyle modifications. Things like monitoring the diet, modifying the diet, and things like exercise, introducing exercise. So it's monitored very closely. Now, in order for a person to be classified as hypertensive, they actually have to have two successive readings that are high. And when I say high, I mean 140/90 or above. Now, why is high blood pressure dangerous? Well, it's dangerous because of the possibility of a heart attack happening or a stroke happening or some sort of organ damage, especially dealing with the kidneys. Many times what happens with high blood pressure is someone will become comorbid. And what I mean by that is that another disease state will be present also with the hypertension, okay? A lot of times it's diabetes that's present with hypertension. Okay, so let's talk about what are some of the causes of the disease, meaning high blood pressure. There can be a few different causes that result in high blood pressure. The first one is a problem with the heart. It could be that the person has a fast heartbeat. Tachycardia will actually cause the blood pressure to increase. Things like kidney problems, where the kidney is not clearing fluid like it's supposed to. So what happens is the fluid does not leave the cardiovascular system like it needs to do, right? That can result in a high blood pressure situation. Or it can be a vascular issue. It can be an issue where the arteries are constricted. And just to give you a little bit of background on the arteries actually have a wall of muscle. Okay, so the arteries have the ability to contract and relax. Now, when the arteries constrict, that increases the blood pressure. Okay, so that's a possible cause of high blood pressure too. You have your other things that can cause issues with the cardiovascular system that can translate into a hypertensive situation. Things like stress. Stress can cause uh, person's heart to beat faster, the arteries to constrict, and all of that good stuff or bad stuff. um, Also, sodium in the diet. Diets high in sodium, because wherever sodium goes, water follows. So, diets that are high in sodium can also cause high blood pressure to happen. Now, what else about high blood pressure? The things that we need to be aware of. There is a strong link between obesity and high blood pressure. Strong, very strong link. So much so that if a person reduces their weight, if they're obese, they can actually take some points off of their blood pressure, which is a good thing. Um, there are women that actually will develop high blood pressure later in life when they're going through menopause, and this has to do with the um, the the decrease in the amount of estrogen that's available. Estrogen is a good thing for women to have when it comes to the cardiovascular system. Estrogen is very protective of the circulatory system. And a woman may find that when she is not going through menopause, or when she's premenopausal, that she doesn't have any problems with pressure. But as soon as she goes through menopause, she has a high, her blood pressure becomes high. Why is that? It's because of the diminished amount of estrogen that's available, and all of the cardiovascular changes that ensue because of that. There are some women that develop it in pregnancy, and while they're pregnant, they will have issues with high blood pressure. Um, what you also need to know is that since there are many different causes of this disease, there are many different classes of drugs that are used to treat it. There's also a predisposition for certain racial groups of people that are of African descent. Uh, Usually will have more problems with high blood pressure, especially if they have an American diet. If they have an American diet, this can actually predispose them to suffer from high blood pressure. And we talked about diets that are high in sodium. Wherever sodium goes, water will follow. So if there's sodium in the cardiovascular system, that means that the person is going to retain water in their cardiovascular system, okay, until it is excreted through the kidneys. Excuse me. While we're here, I just wanted to show you that I do have my heart mug today. My heart mug with, since it is Heart Month, in addition to it being Black History Month. And okay, just wanted to say that. Now we're going to go through the drug classes that are used. Excuse me. The drug classes that are used in high blood pressure. Now, when you look at this list, you see that all of these different classes that are used. We're only going to talk about two of them today, because time will probably only permit for two. So the ones that I've highlighted in red are the ones that we're going to speak about today. Those are beta blockers and diuretics. But just so you know, there's other classes. There's the alpha adrenergic agents. There's calcium channel blockers. There's ACE inhibitors. There's angiotensin receptor antagonists. There are some that are in a miscellaneous category, meaning that they are they have a very unique mechanism of action or a very unique way that they work, and so they can't really be tied to any other category. Um, Starting with the beta blockers. The beta blockers, you can easily recognize them if you look at the generic names of the products because they have similar endings, ILOL, ALOL, or OLOL. And the beta blockers actually work by slowing down the heart rate. They slow down the heart rate. Um, these drugs are actually beta 1 blockers for the most part. There are some that are non selective, meaning that they have some beta 2 blocking ability. And if you don't know what that is, I'll just explain it this way very briefly. Beta 1 works on the heart, and beta 2 works in the lung. Okay. And if you block beta 1, that means that you're going to slow down the heart rate. But if you block beta 2, that means you're going to constrict the lungs. Okay. So these non selective beta blockers actually will cause some bronchoconstriction. And I will also say that beta blockers in general, beta 1 blockers in general, if they're taken, if too much is taken, like in a overdose situation, they can also cause a beta 2 blocking action, which is what we don't want. So these drugs, these beta blockers really should be used with caution in people that suffer from asthma or some sort of COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So things like emphysema, bronchitis, really should be used with caution because there can be some spillover into into the beta 2 effect and cause bronchoconstriction and already exacerbate an existing problem. Okay. These drugs, these beta blockers, also should not be used in diabetics because what we say is that because these drugs slow down the heart rate, they will mask the signs and symptoms of hypoglycemia. So, what that means is if a person's blood sugar goes down, one of the first things that happens is that the heart rate will increase, and it's an effort for the heart to get glucose to the cells, right? But if there is not enough glucose in the person's system, um, yeah, the heart rate is still going to increase, but if a person has taken one of these beta blockers, which will slow down the heart, it's like you don't know what's going on. It's very hard to gauge what exactly is going on. You know, the person may end up in the hospital and the practitioners may have to spend time actually figuring out what is going on with the person. It's actually two things. The person is diabetic, they are hypoglycemic, right? Meaning that they haven't eaten in a while and their blood sugar is low. And at the same time, they've taken a beta blocker. All right, so the next slide, I have put together some of the generic names for these beta blockers. And as you can see by these generic names, that they have that ending that I was talking about: acebutolol, atenolol, nadolol, propranolol, temolol, carvedilol, labetalol. You can see that they have that common ending. All right, so we're doing well. So we're going to move on to diuretics. Diuretics. What can I say about diuretics? Many people like to call them water pills. I don't like to call them water pills, and that just comes to the way that I was trained. I Yeah, I don't really like the term water pill, but it it speaks to what these drugs do. These drugs will cause the kidneys to excrete more fluid. Okay? So, because the kidneys are excreting more fluid, I'm looking over here because my cat is scratching at something. So, if you hear something, that's my cat over there, Fifi. I don't know what you're doing over there, but cut it out. Okay, so the diuretics cause kidneys to excrete more fluid. Diuretics, because of this, should not be given in the evening because it will create another problem where the person won't be able to get much sleep because they're up and about releasing the fluid. Okay, now there's several subclasses of diuretics. There are your loop diuretics, there are your thiazide diuretics. You also have potassium sparing diuretics, and sometimes they're called aldosterone receptor antagonists. You have your osmotic diuretics, and you have your carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. So, we're going to focus on two classes of the diuretics today, and those are the loops and the thiazides. But when you look at your slides, you're going to see a page that looks like this, okay? And what I have done is I have put together all of the different diuretics and broken them up by class, subclass. Okay, so you see that you have your thiazides, your loops, your potassium sparing, your carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, your osmotic diuretics also. Okay, so when we talk about the loop diuretics, these are the most potent diuretics. And one thing that I should mention, it's not on your slide, but one thing that I should mention is with the loop diuretics, they deplete the body of potassium. So it's important that if a person is using a loop diuretic, that they supplement with potassium, because potassium is one of those ions that we do not want it to be low in the body. It can cause all kinds of problems, including issues with the heart. Probably the favorite child of the loop diuretics would be furosemide, and furosemide is Lasix. Something else that's notable to mention about the drugs in this class, when people have an allergy to sulfur drugs, most of the drugs in the loop diuretic class cannot be taken. And that's because the chemical structures are very similar. There is one exception, though. There is a drug called ethacrynic acid. Ethacrynic acid, also known as edecrin, EDECRIN. That's the only loop diuretic that can be used if there's a sulfur allergy. These drugs, the loop diuretics, can cause patients to be sensitive to light. They also can cause what's called ototoxicity, OTO. Auto means ear, so they can cause problems with the hearing, which is, not a good thing. Then we have the thiazide diuretics. Now, let's just go back to loops for just a second. The loop diuretics are called loop diuretics because of where they work. They work in a part of the glomerulus, well, not the glomerulus, but they work in a part of the nephron called the ascending loop of Henle. Okay, and that's why they're called loop diuretics. That's why they're called loop diuretics. Now, the thiazide diuretics are called thiazides because of their chemical structure, not necessarily where they work. Although they work in the renal distal tubule, they don't call them, their name doesn't come from where they work in the nephron. This class, comes from the chemical structure. That's where the name comes from. These drugs can also cause sensitivity to light. And the most prescribed drug in this particular class would be hydrochlorothiazide, abbreviated HCTZ. What's notable about these drugs is that in some patients they can increase the blood sugar. So that's important to know. These drugs also should not be used if there is a sulfur allergy, sulfa, or if there is an allergy to loop diuretics. Okay, and that has to do with the structure. The structures look very similar. Okay, so it's 6:57 a.m. and I'm so glad that you hung out with me. This is the time where we all have some question and answer. Uh, and also I will tell you about the things that APhTI is doing. For more on this topic, because we will talk about some more things dealing with high blood pressure in the coming weeks. So stay tuned to Google Plus on Thursdays this February at 6:30 in the morning. I invite you to take a look at my website, which is APhTI Project, project.com. And from there, you can join our newsletter. And our newsletter comes out twice a month, and we have some really good content there. And just to let you know about that, also you can see us on Facebook, www.facebook.com /the APhTI Project. And also, I have a free giveaway that I'm doing this month of February. And I am pulling up the disc right now. I have a free giveaway. Yeah, Pharmacy Technician Basics. It's a disc it's a physical disc that I'm mailing out to people that contact me and say that they want it. And on this disc are some of the basic things that people should know if they want to become pharmacy technicians, or just if they want to become more aware of the industry. I also have a pharmacy technician math series. This pharmacy technician math series is not free. This is actually $57, but it's 6 different discs, and it's chock full of math. It's like 49 files on here. And some of them are audio, some video, some of them are Word documents. One of the discs is actually a DVD because there was so much content on it that I could not put it on a regular CD. And so these are the things that APhTI is doing. And I thank you for hanging out with me. It is now 7 o'clock. And blessings to you. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching. Bye.
So I got dressed